Boy, did the Big Ten fire back today at the comments that Kirby Smart made yesterday on Sirius XM Radio. Kirby Smart, Joe, yesterday was asked in reference to his thoughts on the future of the college football playoff. Kirby Smart said that the best teams should be in the playoff. He asked the host of the radio show, he asked them that, listen, Indiana, who are you picking right now out of the teams last year? Indiana or the three SEC teams that were left out of the field? Kirby Smart also said that there should be an emphasis on how and who is selected into the college football playoff. And he also talked about the loss column. He's saying we only focus on losses and we don't focus on the schedule and we don't focus on the strength of schedule or strength of record. Who are you taking, Indiana or any of those three teams? Kirby did state in the last comment of the hit, I don't care if 10 Big Ten teams make the playoff next year if all 10 of those teams have proven that they belong to be there. We need to get the best teams in regardless of conference. Joe, your thoughts on Kirby Smart's comments about the college football playoff?
Yeah, I don't think that none of it's surprising to me, and it's expected to this point that Kirby is going to be aligned with how the SEC and all the SEC coaches have spoken to this point where they feel that the selection process is flawed. He didn't even really weigh in on the new model and the 16-team model. He just spoke very.
Hold on, pause. He did. If you go back to the interview, it's the first question that he's asked. He says, I don't care if the model is 5 plus 11 or an AQ model. We want the best teams in.
Whoa, so that's what I'm saying. So the quote that I had in front of me was that where he just wants to focus on improving the selection process, which
yes,
good on him. I think that is something that we've bypassed in this whole conversation. Why have we not spoken more loudly about making the selection process deeper? We've talked about on this show where we think that there should be an algorithm, there should be a metric that should have the same amount of weight as the selection committee. You should have a selection committee that makes the decisions. You should have an algorithm that's making the decisions, and that ultimately puts together your final field. I think that what he emphasized, how the amount of losses that you have should not get you into the playoff, that I have agreed with. It needs to be how you are winning football games. I didn't like him using Indiana as an example, and I'm going to explain this in a second. I think that where it became incredibly flawed and why it had so many issues was SMU getting in the way that they did, Clemson getting in the way that they did. The fact that we landed in this situation where SMU got in because of the fact that they had a good regular season record. They had one loss to BYU, no signature wins, and then they could not get knocked out for losing in their conference championship game. I would rather target SMU, who got embarrassed in their game against Penn State. I think at the very least, and I know that this is opening a can of worms, at least Indiana opened a can of whoop ass on every single team that they played on their very weak schedule. SMU didn't do that. SMU was the one team that I kept bringing up that I had problems with for getting into that playoff field. We need to continue to emphasize the wins that you have, and if you can't help the fact that you've got a weak schedule, you better at least beat the shit out of every team that you're playing.
So finally, you've come around to that the Big 12 and ACC, for what it's worth, does not deserve, based off of the schedules. I mean, well, you're going to have to explain to me more then, because you're basically saying what I've been saying on this show for a long time. You are right. Joe, brother, there were national media members who we respect and have had on this show who went out there at the end of the season saying SMU should not be penalized for losing to Clemson. South Carolina should not be penalized for beating Clemson because they're in another conference. It has been the crux of my argument the entire time. I don't give two flying shits what your record is. I could care less. What does your schedule tell me? Joe, listen, we got to get to a point where everybody is trying to paint this for us that this is a Big Ten versus SEC argument. It shouldn't be. I want everybody to be included too. I want the best teams in, regardless of what conference they come from. It doesn't matter what conference they come from. Joe, 2 years ago when Texas got in the playoff in the Final Four, what did they do? They won the Big 12, but what else did they do? They went on the road to the University of Alabama and won. They did it. They proved that they could go in there and win. My point in this is, and I'm going to fire back, bullshit on Indiana, because Indiana got manhandled by Ohio State and they beat one team above 500. One team went above 500 in Michigan that they beat. One. If I'm the head coach of a team, of even it being in the Big Ten or the SEC, I don't give a shit. You beat one team above 500. And you know what else? If I'm a coach in the SEC, with Wake Forest going away from a game with a home and home, with Ole Miss, with Indiana canceling games, with Nebraska canceling games, Joe, why in the world would I ever not want it to be about strength of schedule and strength of record? Now, if you remember 2.5 months or a month and a half ago, I know that you don't like Brian Kelly, but he said something that is 1,000% true.
And I agreed with this.
The RPI level system, if they could put it together and test it and see if it works, that is how college baseball has gotten a lot of this shit right. For all that college baseball has gotten wrong, the RPI has gotten a lot of shit right. Example, Joe, 4 years ago, the last team in the field was Ole Miss. They were 10th in the SEC. 10th. They won a national title. But the problem is that they faced off against so many teams that were so good in their conference, it looked like, oh, what the shit is going on? That Ole Miss isn't good. No, their teams were really good. They had the toughest schedule in the SEC. Joe, the best teams have got to start getting in the playoff, regardless of what goes down. I don't think that anybody – Joe, how can the Big Ten make an argument when you have Indiana canceling Virginia and going up against Kennesaw State? Now, you could say Virginia is not a good P4 program, and I agree.
Not.
Kennesaw State won 3 games last year.
You're replacing a win with a win.
You're replacing.
They didn't cancel Alabama to schedule Kennesaw State.
There are better athletes at Virginia that will test you more than Kennesaw State.
Barely.
So
UVA is a bad football program.
Regardless, you have a team in one of the G5 programs that are barely getting wins, and you're canceling Power 4 games.
Okay. I need to respond to something else that you said a second ago.
Okay.
We can't overemphasize strength of schedule. We have to wait. We have to meet in the middle on evaluating teams. It is not as simple as just strength of schedule, because then Florida would have been a playoff team last year. Florida would have gotten into the playoff if it was purely based on, do you play close with all the really tough teams on your schedule as long as you're losing those games by a touchdown? We have to have a little bit of reason here. Just because a team has a weak schedule, and Indiana was in the situation where they played a bunch of crap teams, just because they were in that spot, they were able to make up for it by dominating, blowing out every single team on their schedule. That to me at least means something that at least should come into the conversation. Indiana didn't deserve to get booted out of the playoff. They at least should have been one of the last teams in. That is where I will stand on that. We can't just sit here and go, did you play a hard schedule? Okay, fine. Whatever your record is, we don't care. You're getting in. That's what it becomes. And Joe, I don't know off the top of my head. Wait, what year did they cancel? Actually, you could go ahead and what you're going to say, because I want to look up and see what year they canceled that UVA game and see what their schedule is like.
2027, I think. I could be wrong. I have no idea, but I think it might be 2027. I don't remember. Can I read something off for you very quickly on the playoff teams from a year ago? Oregon's strength of schedule was 52nd. They won the Big Ten. Georgia's first. Ohio State strength of schedule, 25th. They went 10-2. Tennessee's 21. Evenly matched teams. They go to Ohio State. They lose. Okay? Fair. Here's where I start having a problem with this. Indiana. Brother, I mean, you're getting in the 80s in this.
Wait. Hold on.
Hold on 1 second. Indiana, strength of schedule, 77th. You want to go with strength of record? 112.
By this logic, Notre Dame shouldn't have gone in, and they played Ohio State.
No, that's not true. I'm glad you brought up Notre Dame. Notre Dame, top 25 wins, 2. Indiana, 0. Like you literally, Notre Dame, fine. I get what you're trying to say there. They actually went on the road and tested themselves and got 2 top 25 wins when Indiana's got 0, Joe. 0. I mean, I can bring it. Well, let me ask you this very quickly. Can I bring this on screen without us getting copyright infringed?
What do you bring it on screen?
It's just a graphic. Let's not do it. Let's not.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
That we've had over the last couple of days. Yeah, let's avoid it.
Okay, that's fair. Texas A&M. Okay, remember when Notre Dame played them? Strength of schedule, 23rd. When I look at the Big Ten teams and the ACC teams, one weighs massively different. Now, I will concede on one thing that you said. The one thing, the strength of schedule cannot be everything. But at the same time, Oregon had 9 conference games. Let's go down. SMU had 9 conference games. Indiana had 9 conference games. Clemson had 9 conference games. Joe, outside of Ohio State, none of them get inside the top 30 of strength of schedule. None of them. By the way, Ohio State plays Texas in the beginning of the season. They will test themselves. I'm starting to get to a point where I don't know how you can disagree with Kirby on this. The ACC's
I don't disagree with Kirby on this.
The toughest strength of schedule comes from Miami at 50, or Clemson, excuse me, at 57th. And by the way, they played Georgia in week 1.
I don't disagree with Kirby on this, and it aligns with what I've brought up before, that there should be a mandate that you should have to play a team in every conference.
You got to, stand by that.
And I don't care if the SEC wants to seem like their schedule is too hard to accomplish scheduling that. I think that it would remove more doubt, and it would make the debates, I think, less vicious.
Last thing I'll read off to you. I'll send you this. I'll send this to anybody for verification if you want it. South Carolina's strength of schedule at 9-3, 12th. Ole Miss, 27th. Alabama, 11th. Think about Alabama for just a second. We talked about them a lot this week. Alabama's top 25 wins, 4. Losses, 1. So we weigh the losses so much. Joe, think about this. Alabama had more top 24 wins than SMU, Indiana, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Clemson combined.
Okay, but the problem
that's playoff teams, Joe.
Yeah, but we're forgetting though that the losses that South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama suffered were bad losses, and they all lost to each other. So that made that dynamic very complicated.
I don't think it should when you're 4-1 against top 25 opponents too.
I do think we have to talk about losses in the conversation, because if you lose to a bad team and you have more than one loss, then it's going to seriously tank your resume. Because which version of you are going to show up?
With all due respect, beating South Carolina and Georgia is more of a resume than, with all due respect, those 5 teams that I read off. They did something that Clemson, Notre Dame, SMU, and Arizona State did not do.
Well, Arizona State got the auto bid, so why are we suddenly canceling them because of their auto bid?
I'm canceling them because if you're going to say the same thing about SMU, I can make the same argument for a 2-loss Arizona State team and their 2 losses that they had. I don't think the losses that Arizona State had is as worse as losing Oklahoma on the road. Sorry, I don't. Maybe the way that they lost made it look worse than what it was, but it's not worse than losing one of the games that they did earlier in the season.
I'm afraid to like keep arguing this because we're just like completely rehashing an argument that we've had like 10 times. But no, I look,
Kirby can't be wrong. He can't be wrong. And then you look at some of these things that some of these other teams did.
I know, but wait, I never said that he was wrong.
I know.
I never said that he was wrong.
But if you're going to talk about resume, Ohio State, the national champion, was 2-2 going into the playoff against top 25 opponents.
Are you saying that that's good or bad for the?
No, I'm saying that it was a tough-ass schedule. It was the toughest schedule in the Big Ten, and 2 of the 4 teams that you played, you lost to.
The Big Ten can't help that half of the teams don't try. They can't.
And the SEC can't help that a lot of teams give a fuck.
I partially reject that. I do think that some of the bad teams in the conference have been overinflated on how good they are. I mean, like I've said that before a million times.
No, I went through this with you before. If we're going record on record, Nebraska was the same relevance in where they ended than LSU was a year ago, and I'm promising you they're going to whip that ass. Nebraska wasn't worth a fuck.